Well, hello. This will become part 1-1 on Telecaster number 3 build. As I mentioned when I was doing part 4, the demo of the switching, I found that it felt a little high up here at the first fret, and I'm not sure how it happened, but for some reason I did get this down, and I thought I had it where it was, but I was working some late nights, and I think I had a little bit of hysteria, and it's not as low as it should be because it felt way higher than my other two tellies, and I could tell right away. So this will be a supplement to part 1 where I talked all about the neck, and I mentioned there that I was going to have to bring down the height of the nut when I was finished and I had the thing strung. So, feeler gauges, Handy Automotive. I want 18 from the bottom of the low E to the fret, number 1, and I want 16 from the bottom of the high E to the fret. Now I came up with this because on YouTube I found specifications saying that, well, you want to press the string at the 3rd fret and measure a certain distance underneath the string, and I'm going, alright, so since I didn't have a better way on telly number 1, I went through this complicated method so that I did that, and then once it was in open position, all I had to do was measure what it is underneath the 1st fret, and that's really what I'm looking for. Why make it complicated and more difficult to have more hands than you need to? So I found that it was 0.018.016, and that's what I did on number 2. It's perfect. And now for some reason I'm measuring today with my trusty gauges, and it is 27. It's probably 28 or 27 and a half at the top, and it's 25 on the bottom, which means that that's no good. It is way too high. So back through what I did initially when I was taking it down. All the strings loosened. I usually just pull them off to the side here, take the nut out, use my trusty sandpaper and a block, and shim it down until I get it to where I want to go. Now keep in mind that I did that so many times on when I was actually filming part 3, that I ended up breaking the E and the B strings because they were on and off so many times that it just couldn't take the stress when it got back under tension. So, little rewinding tool, dewinding tool. All I do is bring them down. First of all, I line them all straight vertical, which makes it easier to do. Just enough to be able to get the string off the side. No more than that. Anything more than that is unnecessary. Then once I do the top 3 in the E, A, and the D, then I start with the high E going downwards, the bottom position. I'm going to just take these from underneath the string tree at the moment. And I think I just loosen that up to do that. Bottom. Okay. And then that'll make it a little easier to get those off. I'll try not to break those strings again. But I do it in increments where I can always take more off, but I can't put it back philosophy. So sometimes it's worth breaking 2 strings. I can replace them for about $2.50. As opposed to getting another nut. And as I found out when I bought an Axemaster. No other nuts I found will actually fit these necks, so I'd have a little bit of a time maybe trying to get one from GFS that would actually fit this neck. I'm not really sure. Now, I need to go to 18. So that's, I'm measuring 27, so that's 9 thou difference on the top, and it's 7 thou difference on the bottom. I don't know if you can tell, but it's a little bit shallower on the bottom end than it is on the top end. So, my trusty little caliper, which is not absolutely necessary, but does make the job a little bit easier, I found. I'm going to measure. Okay, so it's in inches. So what I'm measuring is the string in the groove. Can you see that? In the grooves to the top of the fret. So I need to be able to bring it down 9 thou from in the groove to the top of the fret. So I want 9 thou. So I want to measure in the groove. How much is it now? I know the groove is slightly slotted, and I'm going to measure it. See, it goes in this way. Yes, so I have to measure it from the high side because that's where the bottom of the string sits when it's on the neck. So let's see what that measures on this side. 0.136. The slot for the string on the bottom side is too narrow to fit the caliper, so I can't do that. So 0.136, and I have to bring it down 9 thou, and this one is already 2 thou less, so that would be 134, and we just have to work with that. So I have a piece of 2x3, nice and flat, and the rough cut I have stuck to this little tool which I made to sand the neck pocket with. I've got some 180 grit on the top side for a little bit of a harsher cut. I don't think I want to go any heavier than that. So basically I just put that on my little block and just kind of like put pressure in the center. Having trouble seeing that with that. Up. Put pressure in the center of my block, like that, and then just run it back and forth to be able to get it to come down until I would get 0.018 at the bottom of the string. So this is just long and tedious work, and you do that nice back and forth. Now when that happens, there's little cracks in the bottom of this thing. It gets filled up with dust. That takes care of that. Blow on it. And the edges sometimes here will also have a little bit of a lip build up because of the sandpaper, and I just kind of like with my nail, my fingers just rub that off until she's smooth again. And then once it goes to the point where I feel I've gotten enough off, well, this goes back in, the strings go back up, tune it back to pitch to get the right 10 style on the strings, and then in playing position again, use the gauges to go underneath there and see if I've got 18 and 16 on both sides. So that is the way it's done, and that's what I'm going to do, mostly now off camera, for all the tedious work, and we'll be back. Okay, so I've taken it down a little bit, measured it with my caliper to think that I'm somewhat close. So now basically what I do is I don't glue in my nuts after I break the small little sealant that there was on it to begin with, to get them out, which was just a little block of wood, and just give it a little tap and then lift it out. I just usually, I mean, they press in there, they're so tight anyway, and with string tension they're not going anywhere, so I don't bother with it. Now, to check what I'm looking for, I don't tune the whole guitar. I basically tune the two E's and bring them up to pitch. I have a small Korg tuner here on my table. I'm sure many people have these things, and so I will just tighten that up until I get to pitch. The big one doesn't have to go very far. And I'm not going to put the low E under the string tree for this test at all. B, D, E. There we go. Now, let me see what 27 does. Oh yeah, it's way too much. So we want 18. So let me find my 18 out of all of this. Let me see how it measures in comparison to 18. And move back from the table a little bit. Pick this up. And then just try to see what I can do about slipping that under there. And you know, it's pretty close. I'd say that is, oh yeah, that is pretty close. That is right on there. Let me check the 16. There it is, hanging right out there for me. This one's a bit harder to see in the light. I have to kind of like swing this around. Don't touch the strings. And just see if she'll slip under. Do I see any string movement? And I think that looks pretty good. You know, I got this in one try. I could have lied to you. I could have done it many times off camera, but I'm going to try that all the way up. And give it a shot. A, D. Alright, this time I'm going to put that one under the string tree. Which I'll likely break a G string this time, since it's the original one that I went through last time with the multiple ons and offs. B. So fresh B strings and E strings. B. Let me slip it under there. Tension on these two smaller strings are, that wasn't under there properly. Coming up on E. Go to the finger and thumb. Ooh. I'm getting an awful buzz. The D string came off the saddle. Slot. These are the kinds of things happens when you make guitars. Now this trick with the nut, okay, you can only do this when you have a new neck with a high nut, or you're replacing a nut on a guitar. With a new one, and it's pre-slotted. See lots of videos on the tube about nut files and filing things down when they're not at the correct height. All that tooling is expensive, and if you're doing this kind of work, it's fine. If you're going to start with a blank and you want to go through all of that learning to cut nuts and stuff, ooh, more power to you. It's not something I really want to get into. This is good enough for what I need to do. And new neck, when she's always too high, I can basically flat sand it down to be able to get it to the height I want. Okay, let me unhook that. She's basically in tuning position. So now I will need to go through the rest of the setup again. So, girls and boys, that's what I didn't show you on part 1. So, ergo part 1-1. I hope somebody finds some help with this, and if it only helps one person, that'll have made my recording time and editing it and getting it up on the YouTube all worthwhile. Okay, so she's set up. The saddle heights need to be changed, because when you bring the height of the string down at the nut, what happens then is that the strings at this end that had to have been down a little bit lower to begin with, because these were so high, now they need to come up because this string went, I should say this end went down. So now you've got to set them back out 4/64 over here at the 17th fret. And yeah, when you touch the strings here to make chords, it shouldn't be a chore to get that chorded down there. So if that's what's happening to your guitar, check your nut height, strings over the 1st fret. If it's an electric, actually I do this on my acoustic as well, 0.18, 0.16 at the bottom, and then the middles kind of take care of themselves. Luckily on the nut for this neck, it has a flat bottom. This I didn't mention before. Some fender necks actually maintain the curvature of the radius on the fretboard in the neck nut slot, and if that's the case, you need to be a little bit more cautious. You have to make a little bit more measurements, and you just can't file it flat. I had that issue with Tele number 2, and seriously, what I ended up doing in order to get it right, I have a small aluminum flashlight, an LED flashlight, that had the kind of the right outside diameter on it that I was happy with, wrapping sandpaper around and using it as my tool to be able to keep the curvature in the bottom of the nut. It was a little bit more tedious and a little bit more checking than a flat bottom like this one is, but again, it can be done. Slow and steady wins the race in this kind of work, so we're all good to go. Thanks for watching.